Thanks so much, Sam. And thank you, ImpactHub, for letting us take the show on the road. How many of you guys have been to this meetup before? Wow, really? Oh my goodness, this must be a first for us. This is almost an all brand new audience, so that means you guys must be really, really excited about hearing the speakers that we have today. So, my name is Mercedes. I'm one of the organizers of the meetup, along with Chris and Adrian and Sissy and Diane, and a couple of other people. I've worked at General Assembly for about 3 years, and my role there is I'm head of new ventures focused on building new business lines for us. We're really, really excited to have this panel today. I hope you guys liked that we took the female off it and just called it founders after this, because you know, they're just founders who happen to be female. And I'm really, really excited for all the great stories we're going to hear, and curious what you guys are looking to get out of it. And I will actually just because I know me, I'll go and start asking you guys so many questions. I'm going to just hand it over to Gesche, who's our moderator today, and let her and the rest of the speakers come on up.
Hi guys. We're super excited to have you all tonight. We have a diverse panel of rock stars, founders, that happen to be female. And we put one theme on, so even though everyone's super diverse, there's one aspect that we've focused on tonight, and that's being bold, because as an entrepreneur, that is really a core aspect that one needs. So the theme tonight is Be Bold, which involves bold questions, bold actions, and bold confessions. To give you a little context on Dreamers and Doers, where a lot of these women are part of, is this started over a year ago by accident out of a personal need when I was working on my first venture. So finally I was going after my dreams. I was so excited, but then I was facing all these struggles. And all the struggles that I was facing, I didn't hear anyone else talk about it. And the people I was trying to assimilate were Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs. I went to the extent where I had a period where I tried to wear the same thing nearly every day, because I figured that would help me save time, and a lot of things that I tried to figure out on that journey that didn't quite work for me specifically, until I found a few other entrepreneurial women, and it just grew from there, where we joined forces on our journeys and were able to achieve so much more. And Dreamers and Doers grew from 5 to 10 to now with over 1,500 women, and that's the reason that these 4 women, and we all are in this room today. We'll start. So the way the format will work is we'll have everyone introduce themselves for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move into questions, bold questions, and then as well ask the audience some questions and have you ask questions as well. So now diving into introductions, we'll focus on the past backgrounds of the founders, as well as focusing on points in their lives that were particularly bold and what got them to be that bold.
Hi guys, my name is Deepti. I started a company called FoodtoEat. So a little bit about myself. I'm a native New Yorker. I love talking about that because I feel like you don't run into a lot of them these days. So that means I was born and brought up here, not living here for 10 years or whatever it is people say. But with that being said, I worked on about 4 different political campaigns before I started my company. And so I would like to say what I thought was a bold move was steering away from the comfort of knowing that I could have a job in the political arena right after college. I decided, hell with that, hell with law school, I'm going to start a company and hopefully it'll go somewhere. So FoodtoEat today is a company where we partner with local food trucks, restaurants, and caterers, and we bring their services to corporations to help build corporate culture. So basically our mission is to help companies realize that if you invest in your employees, you will actually create a better culture, because every company is doing it, from Google to Facebook. Why shouldn't every other company think about doing it as well, no matter how small you are? But that was, from our pivot, and we can get into that later, but that's me.
Hi everybody, my name is Tiffany Gaines. I have a company called Lovability, Inc. Our mission is to inspire women to be proudly prepared with condoms. I'm from San Diego, California. I've lived in New York for 7 years, went to NYU for undergrad, studied social entrepreneurship, and recently got my master's in design for social innovation. Something bold that I've done while having a condom business as a woman is a pretty bold move. It's something that I deal with every single day. You know, I'm kind of a contradiction in a lot of ways, and dealing with people's reactions, whether it's with guys at a bar or people that I'm pitching to, it's constantly pretty, it feels pretty daring, and it can be scary at some points. Something bold that I've done for my business is I've really made a lot of sacrifices lately and changed my lifestyle to enable myself to be financially independent and live in New York City and pursue my dreams. I went from living in an apartment by myself to living in one with 5 other people, 4 of which are guys. So that was pretty crazy.
Show them your product.
Oh, these are Lovability condoms. If you'd like to check them out, you can come up and say hi a little bit later. They're also available online. You can check us out on social media too.
Hey guys, my name is Raquel. I'm CTO of Adventurely. Just finished my own venture called ExploraPhones, which is my first own startup. One bold thing that I can say I've done is going from, when I started out in high school at an all-girls school with no computer background whatsoever. Fast forward 4 years, and I'm working at a video game industry job where it's virtually all male. So that was a complete 180, and that's how I started my career. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. So
we were on the phone before this talk, and she mentioned that you didn't have a computer. You didn't have a computer until you got to college, right?
Yeah. Never owned a personal computer until I got to college in 2000, and it was mandatory. So really had zero background whatsoever. But yeah, turned out
really impressive.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Pagkalinawan. My family moved to the United States and landed in New York when I was 8 years old. And so that was a very bold move for my parents to leave a country where they were familiar with and travel with their 5 children and start a new life. So I figure after that, everything else is easy. So they're my inspiration. Something bold that I've done. Okay, what I'm doing now. I started a company called Apploud, which allows you to share live music videos that you see, whether it's on the subway, on the street, or at a concert, and post it. And from there, if you tag the Twitter handles of the artists, we allow other fans to tip them and buy tickets to their next show or buy their music. So that's my sort of like impact I wanted to make, because I'm a huge music lover. And I thought, what if there were more than 20 people on a subway platform with more people to give that musician money? And that's the thesis behind it. So it launched a couple of years ago. I hope if you all have iPhones, because it's only iOS right now, you can download it. It's Apploud, A-P-P-L-O-U-D. And something also that we were just talking earlier with these ladies, how difficult it is to be bold and do what your passion is and make the move. And I also happen to be a mom of a 12-year-old, so everything I do impacts him. But at the same time, I believe that what I'm doing that's impacting other people and helping other people is a good way to lead by example. So leaving my corporate job and our cushy lifestyle is not a bad thing. Thanks.
So we've already gotten a little bit of color of some of your guys' journeys, which there wasn't only smooth sailing. Can you talk about some of the toughest and most fundamental lessons you've gone through, and what was it that kept you going on?
So for myself, a lot of the times I spent thinking about a few questions, and a lot of when I first started the business, and it was, why is this important? Why is this important to me? And why am I the best person to do this, right? So those were the 3 things that I started with, and I still do this every day as a practice, right? Why am I doing this? What kind of impact do I want to make? And who is this business really for? Is it for me, or is it to make the largest impact that I could possibly make? So I think about those things all the time, but when it comes to thinking about struggles and things that I've had to deal with, when I first started the company, I still don't have a technical background. But what was interesting was I had launched the company in India. So I was going there because I thought that would be the best place for me to start development. This was back in 2009 when I was thinking about just the idea and where to even start. So New York wasn't as friendly as it is today. in 2008, 2009. So that was where I went. And everybody that I went to, I look like I'm 12 sometimes, depending on the day and what my hair looks like. And so they were like, oh, so this is a project. I was like, no. I've graduated college. I am 24 years old, and I'm starting a company. And so that was a struggle as a young female to constantly go through every single time that I was approaching people, hey, would you be interested in partnering with me to start this business?
A quote that I heard about entrepreneurship a few years ago that really stuck with me is that entrepreneurship is like jumping off a cliff and building a plane on your way down. And that is absolutely what it has felt like for me. You kind of jump in with this big idea, and you need to put together the pieces to make it a reality, all on this ridiculous timeline because, there's money at stake, there's, deadlines and things like that. So one of the ways that I've really felt like I could stay resilient and keep doing this and accomplish my goals is to really take things one step at a time and trust that if you take that step right in front of you, it will eventually lead you to where you need to go. It can be really difficult when you're starting a business and people are passionate about your mission. I get ideas all the time of like a direction I should go with Lovability. Oh, you should get it in there. Oh, you should sell them in hotels. You should, go to Malaysia and do this or whatever. All these crazy ideas, and most of them seem awesome, and I just want to jump in and do everything because my mission is so big. But you don't get anywhere if you just keep taking a bunch of first steps in a bunch of different directions. And so what I've learned to do is now focus and take one step at a time in the direction that matters most, and to identify that direction and keep your vision and stay true to it until you realize you might need to pivot, which that's a whole nother issue. But I think really keeping your eye on the prize and understanding that you can't do everything at once, it's one step at a time.
I think one of the most important things to keep in mind when you start a business is just how much you're not going to know. And you have to be fearless. You have to jump in. You have to know without a doubt why you're doing what you're doing and just not be afraid. I don't know squat about marketing, but you know what I learned. I didn't have a business background, but I learned. And, when you're running a company, especially a startup with maybe only 2 or 3 other people, you're going to have to reach outside of your limits of comfort, without a doubt. So just be fearless and be very confident in what you're doing.
I just wanted to add to that, because being fearless, you have to be able to ask for help when you need it, and you have to ask for a lot of help. And then you have to ask for investors, and ask for people to meet with you, and ask for strategic relationships, and ask for press. And if you don't have a PR firm, you're contacting the bloggers and the writers yourself. So it's a constant process of asking. And I would say if you're getting a 50-50 ratio from yes to no, you're doing an excellent job. So be prepared for the no's. And I was just speaking with a friend earlier today that they say men are more prepared for the no's because growing up, they ask out girls and they get a lot of no's. And apparently women are less prepared to accept the no's, and we get dejected and depressed. And it's harder for us to get back up and get motivated to do it again, but we have to do that. So just the fearlessness and being prepared to accept the no, but not be discouraged with the no's.
So Cecilia is now at her second startup that is venture-backed. I'd love to hear more about your third. I'd love to hear more about your fundraising journey and what others think about VC funding in general, and if that's the route to go, and if they have any advice on that. And also if there's any contradictory advice either advice that you've gotten that you would deject, or any advice that's contradictory, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, so the first one, I was the 6th employee of a startup that went public, and within 2 years, I became a VP of client services, overseeing clients from Audi to IBM, and I was 26 years old. So I said so at 27, I decided to start an e-commerce consulting firm. I thought e-commerce was going to be the next big thing. And so in 1998, I went to 9 West. And they became my client. 2 years before Zappa was even launched, we launched 9 West's e-commerce site, and within 3 months, it paid for itself. So then, what I didn't realize was that I was actually bootstrapping this company for 2 years. I didn't even know what the word was, because I didn't raise money for 2 years. And after 2 years, I was able to get a VC to give me $5 million with another $12 million commitment. So then I found myself owning 70% of a company that was valued at $12 million. So that was then. And that was when less than 2% of venture capital money went to women-owned companies. My second startup was called Style Trek. I had a kid, and in between, I worked in corporate. I launched Burberry's e-commerce site in 2003, then got hired away by La Perla. I was making a huge, salary working at these multinational European companies. But I didn't really feel that being really good at selling expensive products to very wealthy people who didn't need them was a big accomplishment. So I wanted to get back on being an entrepreneur. So I wanted to apply what I learned in fashion and corporate and apply it to a startup called Style Trek, which featured emerging designers around the world. I wanted to help emerging designers get a platform to get a global audience. But it was very ambitious. This was in 2010 when I started this company, and raised $1.8 million in my seed round, actually. It was a seed round that was like $1.8 million. I was trying to raise $500,000, but then everybody was throwing money at me. They read an article in Wall Street Journal and in the New York Times. Kathy Horan wrote about us. And so that was, it was almost unreal, and it was too easy. And I basically realized at that point I wasn't really prepared, because I literally overshot everything and wound up missing a lot of goals that were set by my investors. And when you take $1.8 million, you have 12 investors at least you have to listen to, and some of them had 4 partners within a fund they had to listen to, and it became really, really, really overwhelming. So that was a failure. And so the other thing is, once that happened, though, I thought I was never going to be an entrepreneur again. I wasn't going to do it again. It was a big failure, and I was embarrassed about the whole thing and felt like I let a lot of people down. And somehow I got the impetus to be an entrepreneur again, and this time to follow my true passion, which has always been music. So I decided to do a lot of research, talk to a lot of people, meet with a lot of people in the music business, and wanted to apply what I've learned in e-commerce and converting customers to spenders and shoppers, to apply that with musicians to get more people to view a product, which is their music or their performance, and hopefully help make them money. And so, so we're in the process of doing this, and this time I launched the whole thing, not with $1.8 million, but with $130,000, and really put a lot more of myself into it, and a lot more of my work into it, because it's really a work of passion, and I'm very determined to make this one work. So what is the thing that people tell you that you should not listen to? It's hard because so many people give you conflicting advice, and the hardest thing is, like, for every question you have and somebody gives you a definitive answer, somebody else will give you the opposite definitive answer. And it's really up to you to trust your gut to see how you should proceed. And any time I go back to questions, like my biggest mistake I realized was everybody, oh, that's a good thing. When I took the $1.8 million, everybody said at the time, take as much money as you can if they're offering it to you, because it's better to have it than not. Well, so I took that advice, when in reality, I had to answer to so many people who and I started second-guessing myself, because these people gave me so much money that when somebody who gave you $400,000 is telling you should do something this way, and you're like, okay, you know what I mean? It's hard to say no. So that's I think that the hardest thing. Like, I don't think you should take more money than you need, and I think you shouldn't take money from people that you don't really trust, because later on it'll really bite you in the ass.
And Tiffany went the crowdfunding route very successfully.
So I started Lovability in between my first and second year of graduate school, and decided to take the lean startup method, which is when you create a minimum viable product, so something that basically solves the need that your problem is trying to solve, and you really kind of test if people want it, test if people need it, or if they'll buy it. And so I'd say within a month from coming up with the idea, I had designed what my condom packaging would look like. I had sourced it from manufacturers domestically where I didn't have to make large orders. I assembled the product, and I got it in a few stores to see how it would go and how customers would respond. I think there's a big trend right now to look to investors for validation for your product, but especially with something like a hard good, it really takes bringing it in front of your target audience and understanding their reactions, because what that gives you the opportunity to do is iterate and change it and make it better and better so it really meets their needs before you go and spend a lot of people's money. It's also very easy to get caught up and distracted in the funding process. I think it could get kind of competitive, like, oh, I raised this much, and it kind of is part of your identity as a company. And even though it's been difficult with very little funds running my business, it's really forced me to listen to my customers intently. And one of the biggest challenges about that is getting your product in front of your prospective customers. There are so many things going on in the world. How can I get people to pay attention to this condom company with a mission to have every woman carry condoms in her purse? You'd think Cosmo would want to write about that. It's been very difficult. But finally, with Indiegogo, I decided to put it all out on the line. I actually wasn't going to continue doing my business if I couldn't raise the funds through Indiegogo. We raised $20,000 in 24 hours and surpassed our goal by a lot of money, and we're still in business because we know now that women want and need this product, and they want to buy it in the stores that we envisioned. So sometimes it's worth it to hold tight and look for validation from your consumers rather than investors. It was actually investors that I pitched to that told me to do the Indiegogo campaign because they believed in the product but felt like I needed consumers to validate it first.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I initially started bootstrapping. I think sometimes I get into, I just learned this word, so I'm not sure if I'm using this right, FOMO, fear of missing out. The fear of missing out of looking up TechCrunch articles every other day and everyone and their mother getting funded for, yo, like what, really? Come on. Like that's an app that says, yo. And so as an entrepreneur, you kind of, everybody knows what I'm talking about. You read those TechCrunch articles and you go, who got a valuation of what? Billions? And you're just confused because you're like, I have a product that's actually making money. We have revenue and we've tripled our sales. We've tripled the number of companies we're working with. Why is it so hard for me to raise money? So I, came from a background of, from politics where you kind of have to do the same thing. You're basically selling yourself to everyone. I'm selling a candidate. She looks beautiful and she's going to promise you this and all of that. So I decided that I was going to bootstrap and not ask people for money. So I bootstrapped my own money, and then I started realizing, well, that's not going to be enough. And I went to friends and family, collected $500,000 on debt, and that took about a year to do. But it was selling myself as opposed to just the idea. And I really do think that investors look for the best possible founders because they know that if this product fails, then you're going to create something even better, and you're going to do that. You're just always going to be awesome. So we've always, I've only raised from friends and family. I'm actually going out now for an institutional round, and to what Cecilia said, I'm freaked out because I'm, everybody's looking at our deck and they're like, oh, you should put this in your deck. You should put this in your deck. I'm like, God damn it, what do you want to see? Like, what really do you want to see? Because I can tell you, pour my heart about my business, and if you don't believe in it, then you're not the right investor. And everyone says, well, you should just take the money. But I also feel like that relationship goes a long way, and I don't want to be stuck in a relationship listening to someone telling me what to do about my business and then later crying about it or just being upset, like now I can't even run my business properly. So I'm not in the position to, say like I can choose which investor I want because I'm the hottest shit in the world, but I feel like you should think you're the hottest shit, right? Because if you do, then you'll get the right person to invest in your business, and you'll be happier because that relationship carries through so much longer and hopefully get you further, next step investors. So that's been my experience. I don't know if that's great advice, but it is what it is.
That's very helpful. And Raquel, you're launching Adventurely now. What are your thoughts on how you will fund that?
I think we're going to start off by bootstrapping. With my last venture, Explora, it's tough because investors always want to see user traction first, but in order to get traction, you kind of need some funding. So it's like this chicken and egg problem. But bootstrapping helps you kind of side skirt that whole issue. And it avoids a whole host of other issues. Because like you mentioned, we had some investors who wanted to deal with us, but they also wanted us to pivot our product. And so we had to sit down internally and say, all right, what do we really want to do here? Are we more concerned about making money, or do we really want to build a product that we want to build? And with Adventurely, we're still very early, and we're still trying to figure out our investor approach, but for now we're just keeping it to bootstrapping it ourselves with family and friends.
That's great. That's very exciting.
Just because I see a lot of women in the audience, there are some great resources and venture funds that give open office hours, especially for this company called Golden Seeds. Check them out. They invest in primarily women-led startups, and I learned more about the investment process by going to their office hours. They really educate you on how to create your deck and what they look for, and actually sit down with you and kind of vet your company before you actually have to pitch to the investment firm. And those investors that heard me pitch my company have now become my mentors, even through my crowdfunding campaign. So I really think that's building a good relationship for the future if I ever want to seek investment from them. But I highly recommend kind of just seeing the different resources that New York has to offer in terms of learning from the inside of those investment firms.
So on the topic of resources, we've heard that there's a lot of bad advice out there and a lot of contradicting advice. So on this journey where so much is at stake, you all gave up quite a lot, you have really, really high goals. Where did you find the best resources to be in addition to like Golden Seeds? Was it friends, family? Was there anyone in particular you definitely wouldn't listen to? And I also love how open you are with like mistakes. So what are some of the big mistakes you've made that you've learned the most out of and that you'd encourage other people to not make?
So I surround myself, or now I'm aiming to surround myself with as many founders as possible, and am actually hosting founder dinners with some friends because it's one of the few places that will actually be honest. I realized that, I'd been in a relationship when I started my business, but no matter what I was going through, it was really hard to explain what that it was, because it's a lonely process, right? It's you're fighting with yourself every day about whether you're making the right decision, and you have a group of people that you've hired and brought on to leave whatever it is that they've been wanting to do to be with you, so you're like responsible for them. One piece of good advice somebody did give me was, I used to say, my team is my family. You wouldn't fire your team, right? I mean, you wouldn't fire your family, so you wouldn't fire your team. So you think of your team as opposed to family, right? So that was one really good piece of it, because I can't really let go of my mom. She's always going to be my mom no matter what I do. But if I hire a COO, I can say, hey, you're fired, and that's it, So that was one interesting piece of advice. But just, I don't know. I think that's like one thing that I've kind of gone through. But the founders thing has helped a lot, just because we've been so honest about it. Like, every day is not so amazing. It sucks. It's a really shitty process sometimes, and accepting it and like talking it through with other founders has been very, very helpful. So founders, and recently more female founders as well, because I can share stories like an investor told me, or an investor asked me when I was going to have a kid. And I said to him, excuse me, I don't think that's an appropriate question. You didn't even know I was married. You looked at my finger and assumed that a ring meant I was married. So you made that assumption, and then you're asking me when I'm going to have a kid. If you're not allowed to ask that in an HR interview, it's wrong, so you can't ask me. And that's when I knew, not for me. So these are stories that I get to share with other women, and I can come up with better answers than fuck off,
The biggest mistake I made was for the first year of my business. I really tried to do it all alone. I come from a family where my parents own their own business and they never had any partners, so I had a little bit of partner phobia. I was scared. I'd heard stories of people getting screwed over. I mean, look at Facebook, like all this different stuff has happened. So I kind of felt like the only way to protect myself was to just do it on my own. And it became a very lonely, very overwhelming process. I wasn't asking for help when I needed it. And I felt very isolated going through my challenges and didn't really feel like I had people that I can share the ups and downs with. Being an entrepreneur, it's very volatile. One day you get really great press and you're on top of the world, and the next day someone thinks that you're out to sabotage, humanity, and you're like, oh my God, like, this is horrible. And so if you don't have a team, and people have thought that about my business, I'm like, what? So when you don't have a team to share those ups and downs with, it can be very, very challenging. Advice that I've learned just through the past 2 years has been to be both authentic and vulnerable in your social circle, in your social media circle, when I was really struggling with my business, I disconnected from a lot of my friends because I was just so busy trying to make things work. And I heard these rumors going like, oh, Tiffany thinks she's too good for everyone. She's just doing so well. Everything's going so great. And in reality, I was sitting in my pajamas till 5 p.m. every day, like crying, trying to figure out what my next step would be. But people were, which is true, but people were really didn't have the right idea. And I realized that it was time for me to really be authentic about what I was going through. And I had such more real and wonderful relationships with my friends and family once I decided to open up, and people started offering to help. Today, 4 friends helped me assemble 1,000 condom tins, and it was wonderful. So that's my
I think it's really important to always have some sort of coach or a mentor, you know, throughout all parts of your life, no matter what you're doing. You're on a team, right? You're running a company, you're working very closely, you're probably spending more time with your team members than almost anybody else. Particularly in the early stages, and you need to have a network that you can really rely on, you know, so that if for some reason you can't do something one day, you know that your teammates are going to pick up the slack and fill in for you. So you need that trust, and you need people that you can look up to. You know, you should pick a strong group of quality advisors that you can always turn to for advice, no matter what industry you're in. Pick somebody who's been there before, who can offer you some kind of guidance. With Explorer, that was invaluable.
So yeah, so I just everybody talking just made me think back of what it was like in the late '90s, where I think there were only 3 female VCs that existed at the time. So it's a wholly different time. The fact that there's this gathering here, that Gesche can get an organization started with 1,500 people within a year, that there's women out there now who are offering to be mentors and support your dreams. And which didn't exist then. So, and even talking about vulnerability now, that you can you're able to do that. You know, coming out of in the 90s, women were still trying to like act like men and wear suits in offices, and we wouldn't be wearing short skirts or, you know, and you know, and supposedly that's not proper work attire. So it's, a lot of things have changed, and so now, I mean, I think it's a great time to be a female and a founder and an entrepreneur, because I think we should actually probably, I mean, on your website, I think, and you're always sharing, if you're not part of Dreamers, you should join, because when I post articles there, I always say, okay, what would I share with people I'm mentoring? And I'm constantly posting things there. That's my way of giving advice. And so, I actually mentor 3 people right now. I'm on the board of Venture for America, where we identify very talented college grads, and we place them in re-emerging cities like Detroit and Providence and New Orleans. When I was coming up, there really were no mentors. So you're very fortunate right now that there's all this resources out there for you.
Speaking of which, when I started out, all the resources I saw publicly available were all about work. They're all about fundraising. They're all about product. They're all about user acquisition. And that's all what I read, and that's all what I tried to do. I tried to work nonstop. I was optimizing all of my life. You heard my story of me trying to wear the same thing every day. I was trying to work 100 hours nonstop. But then what I realized after time, that this emotion override didn't work for me. So when I optimized my life and I was able to work 5 hours more this week, I would pay that back down the line because something else was going to be off. And I learned this the hard way, and that's why Dreamers and Doers came to existence. That's the thing, like, we are our business as entrepreneurs, but it's not only work, we also have personal lives. And I'd be curious to hear how you manage the two. Do you have a personal life? How did it affect it? What are some personal tips that have helped you maintain both, or not?
Personal life, work-life balance.
I mean, Cecilia, you have a son.
You can go first. You have to deal with that more.
So I had my son in between startups. It was after the first one, and then I took a sabbatical, and then I actually decided to have him as a single parent. Found myself pregnant right after 9/11, decided to keep him. And so I said, I guess I should get a job now. So actually, I had a warped sense of thinking because I didn't have a job and I was such a workaholic. I thought, what's a better time than now to have a child? So I actually sublet my apartment in New York. I moved in with my parents. I stayed with them. And I actually, all the job offers I was having at the time, because e-commerce was hot and there were very few executives that actually knew how to launch an e-commerce business successfully, I started taking them on as a consulting project. So while I was pregnant and living with my parents, I was consulting with GE Capital on a turnaround company that they were doing. So I was getting paid decent money to work a few hours a week, and which was helpful because I was anemic. I literally, one of the reasons I had to move in with my parents when I was 3 months pregnant was I fainted in the bank at Soho at the Chase Manhattan Bank. And I said, oh, I guess I can't do this on my own, and I need help. So it was the first time where I had to ask help. Mom and Dad, I need help. I need someone to take care of me. So I had to do that. So part of it is to know your limitations. But as soon as my son was 3 months old, I sent out an email to friends and colleagues saying I'm ready to go back to work, and one of my competitors from my previous business was now COO of this company and offered me a job as VP of Strategy. So it was from my own competitors who respected my work where I got the job. So, and then I got, Burberry was one of my clients, and then they hired me away. But since I was now a mom, I'm a single parent, I needed the benefits and a stable salary. So for 7 years, I was not an entrepreneur. I stayed in corporate for that stability. So the sacrifice was, once I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur again, but this time around, and shed the corporate salary of 6 figures, et cetera, I had to make a tough decision on scaling back my lifestyle, get rid of the car, move my son from private school to public school, move from Upper East Side to Brooklyn. There were a lot of steps, but that's why you have to be prepared to make those tough decisions, because the less of a burden you have in terms of financial burden, the more fluid you can be with making decisions and be agile about your business. So when you have someone threatening to quit or an investor threatening to pull their funds, you're not hurt so much because it's not going to make a huge impact. So I think that's what I would say.
And just to add to it for the women who don't have kids, which includes me, what are you thinking about kids? I'm now strongly considering freezing my eggs. Just on a side note, I always thought, so basically the people who talk most about it are the people where it's nearly not the ideal time anymore. Ideally, when you get your eggs frozen, you should do it in your 20s. So I've recently met a lot of women in their late 30s and their 40s, and like, oh my God, I wish I had done it if I was your age. I wish someone had told me when I was your age that I should freeze my eggs. So I'm seriously considering to do it now, just because it gives you a lot more flexibility. And if you think, oh, I want to get kids in 3 years, it will probably be later than that. So just curious how you've managed in terms of personal life, but also what your thoughts are on kids and how that fits in with your entrepreneurial dreams.
So back to what that investor had asked me when he said, when are you planning on having kids? And besides just cursing him off, I also said, I just gave birth to one, my company, and I didn't let it go. So that was one, like your company is kind of like your child. You kind of can disband it too, and you have to let it go, so kind of can't compare it to it. But I said it just to kind of make a point to him. When it comes to, I had to be bold, right? I had to be like, what? When it comes to thinking about having kids, my husband and I have talked it multiple times, and like financially, I think that in life, there's never a right time for anything. People are like, there's never a right time to start dating someone. There's never a right time to start a company. There's never a right time to get married. And you somehow make it work. Right? You somehow make it all fit into the lifestyle. Was it the right time for you? Maybe, maybe not. But like you.
So revealing my age, I was 30 when I had my son. So it was not the right time. But guess what? Later on, I got married, and it turns out he was unable to have children. So if I didn't have my son when I did, I would have probably never have a kid right now. Yeah. So later on, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I married someone and actually expected to have a child with this person, and it wasn't possible. And actually, my app is kind of like, to some degree, very much influenced by my son, because now he's Generation Z that everybody's trying to attract. And I'm like, every time I have a feature and I like look at what he's playing with, like, oh, I can do that. Because he's obsessed with apps, and he downloads them and looks at the best apps, and he deletes the one that he hates, and he shares with his friends the ones that he likes. And so I'm pinging him all the time. And actually,
You gave birth to your prime audience.
Yes.
That's what we're all going to do now.
Built-in focus group at home. How did I didn't know that. I couldn't plan it better. And also, he's in a band now and plays the guitar. So perfect. But yeah. So part of it is anything can happen. You can plan your life as much as you can, but be prepared for anything. And when Gesche posted about the eggs thing, I'm telling you, I'm sorry we're diverging into this topic. Who wants to change the topic?
Nobody.
Okay, 2 people. All right, for the rest of you, I have friends who are approaching their 40s who are trying to have kids and cannot, and spending tons of money in vitro. So when she said, should I freeze my eggs, I basically said yes. And so because of all the women, and those are the ones that have told me they're having problems. So I don't know how many more out there are having problems and keeping it a secret. So everything that you read of women having babies in their 40s, they spent money on it. I have a friend who had a baby in her 40s. She also had a donor egg. It wasn't even her egg that she carried. So anyway, enough of that.
But yeah, I mean, my answer in short was just go for whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's, and I think like in life in general, not to get philosophical, everything happens for a reason. So whether you want to have a kid, get married, start a company, just do it, go for it. Don't say, oh, I think I'm going to plan and I'm going to do 50 million other things, because at the end of the day, something that this is diverging in a different way, but something I learned from my dad, he sent me this video, an inspirational video about athletes, and what at the end of all of that, it was saying that the graveyard is the richest place in the world. And why it's the richest place is because the people that, that are there, they died with their dreams because they never gave it a shot. They never tried. So when it comes to starting your own business, when it comes to doing anything, don't die with your dreams. Don't die with that idea. Just live while you are. So if it is having a kid or not having a kid, or starting a business or not, just do what it is that you want to do, because you don't have as much time as you think you do. My husband's in the hospital right now, and I was going to cancel and not come, but I decided I'm going to do this anyways, because at the end of the day, I wanted to share my story. And if I don't share my story, no one else is going to hear it. No one else is going to think I too can do this. And he made me realize that life is too short, so that's my work-life balance. I decided that I left work all week, and I've been sitting there with him. And this was my one outing because I needed to shower and get out. But at the end of the day, do what it is that you want to do, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And so that's my one thing with that.
Thank you from all of us for making it today.
I think, often in startup life, personal life becomes kind of like a 4-letter word. If you admit that you're going out and having fun outside of work hours, that somehow you're unprofessional, or you're not dedicated, or you're putting something else above your dedication to whatever it is that you're working on. And that's not true. When I worked in video games, it was expected that you would work crazy overtime for a year or more, 6-7 days a week, and that was just what you did, and it's not sustainable. I was reading Lean In, and Sheryl Sandberg talks about how your job is to demand of you, right? They're going to continue to ask and ask and ask of you. It's your responsibility to set those limits and say, you know what? No, this is where I have to stop, take a break, do whatever it is. This is my personal life that I need to take care of. Nobody's going to do that but you.
And talking about bold questions, initially the panel was called Female Founders, and it changed to Founders. What is your opinion on having that designation or not? Is it offensive? Is it not? But then the question is also about quotas. Is it something that advances women, or does it do them a disservice? So what are your thoughts on that, as well as if there are differences between women and men, what are they, and how do they come into play in your experience?
I'm very passionate about the power of femininity and using that to our advantage in whatever way we can. I think women have a tremendous opportunity right now to tap into their desires and kind of reinvent the world to make it a way that they really want it to be. We didn't play a huge role in the Industrial Revolution in America. A lot of men were out there creating a lot of the things we interact with on a day-to-day basis. we don't even realize that a lot of the world was designed with a very kind of masculine sensibility. Not to say that everything should be the color pink, but the color pink is fine. But I think that it's really wonderful to embrace the elements of the woman that you are that make you feel proud and happy and wonderful, and use that to inspire you to create things that make your life better and make other women's lives better. I have found that characteristics of mine have really helped me as a business person. I feel like I'm a good listener. I'm very empathetic. I'm a very good negotiator. I can be strong, but I can also be sweet. And I think that really embracing those qualities as a businesswoman is something that we should be proud of. And I am not at all ashamed of being a woman. I feel like, you know, if it's called female founders, I'm happy about that. If it's founders, I'm happy about that. But that's just me because I've really just enjoyed the journey of being a female founder.
I think it was important to call it that initially because as Dreamers grew, it was a safe place for women to go to where they didn't have to get hit on. So, and also, I'm sure a lot of the women preferred to come and hear other women instead of just bros hanging out here and talking about their stuff. So, but I think because once I actually read that no matter how much money is now being spent and invested in tech and tech-related companies, it's still 2%. It hasn't changed since 2000. So it's a lot more work needs to get done to get more women in positions where they can make decisions on the investments, where there are mentors, where there are programs in schools, and also in terms of childcare. I'm sorry, I have to say that. It's needed. When I had my startup, Boutique Y3K, we actually created a specific conference room for emergency daycare. Because how many times, like, oh, my babysitter didn't show up, or, you know, something, or my kid's off school today and it's Martin Luther King Day, but you're supposed to still show up to work. And I wanted them to feel like they have a place where the kids were okay. They can bring them there and they can pool in childcare together. Corporations still don't do it. When Nine West was a client and we had a pregnant staffer, I said, is there a room where she can pump? They were like, oh my God, we're 70% women. We don't have a pumping room. I mean, but we had to initiate that. So part of it too is all of those things. So women don't leave the workforce and don't make compromises like I had to for 7 years. Instead of being an entrepreneur, I had to work in corporate because I needed the health care and the stability. So we all need to feel more safe to be women. So I'm not against any quotas for us to even get to 50-50 because we're nowhere near 50-50.
I mean, I guess I can say when I first started working, I was like the anti-women's anything group person. I didn't want to be known as a female programmer. I didn't want to be known as a female founder. I wanted nothing to do with that adjective whatsoever because I felt like it just marginalized us and emphasized how unique and like how small a minority we are. You know, I really looked forward to the day where we didn't have to prefix everything with like a woman or female whatever, you know, or the first female whatever it is. But there is a lot of strength drawn from building that network and, you know, like the things that you just mentioned, which are really important that you wouldn't bring attention to unless you had the strength of that group. So it's, you know, at the end of the day, I'm torn. I'm really torn.
I think it is important, like the quotas, as much as I don't like quotas, but it brings a certain light on the fact that there is inequality, there is a gender gap, and it brings that to the people that don't actually understand that there's an inequality. I went to a conference in MIT, and out of the whole conference, it was a VC conference, and they had one panel that was all female VCs, but not any other panel had women. And so that was their way of filling a quota, and I was like, this is MIT Business School, are you kidding me? And I tweeted at them, and you know, none of them, you know, acknowledged it, and I just thought it was kind of ridiculous. So I think there has to be this quota, and the fact that there are, you know, Ed Zimmerman, I had just recently found out, I had read an article that he made that stance, right? And I think the more men that do it, the more comfortable it becomes for women. So it's, you know, quotas don't sound, you know, there's this negative connotation on them, but I think it's important just to bring the light on the other side. So yeah, definitely, I think the more we can do for each other, the more it's helpful.
Yeah,
So in the panel yesterday, the reason was why they didn't have females initially was that they couldn't find any. So I sent them an email and told them that I know quite a few women that I can recommend. And also, a funny side note, like even just the difference of being an all-male panel now and an all-women panel, like everyone was sitting like this yesterday, and yeah, it's fun and everyone, like now this is like quite orderly. Everyone was just like talking, hearing themselves talk. And for me, one thing I feel like struggles. I mean, everyone knows that you need a support network as an entrepreneur. You're doing so many things on your own. Your lot is at risk. But some of the struggles we face might be individual to women. And I think one thing I had was that feeling of isolation that you mentioned. I wanted to mention this story where a girlfriend and I, we took a video of ourselves talking about how we're about to turn 30 and we've never been this confused in our career where we felt like this is the last time that we get to do something before we get kids. So we posted it within the group, and we got so much feedback. So many women reached out and said, hey, this is exactly what I felt as well. I'm so glad you shared it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I posted it on my Facebook wall. Silence. But clearly people were watching the video. I got 1,500 views. And so, but no woman was comfortable posting on the actual Facebook, on my page, because it was publicly available, I guess. And I had 2 men reach out. One man said, you seem like you need help. How can I help you? Like, you seem really confused. And the other man said, I'm out of my mind, because he knows a lot of women who have kids and who are successful. So I think that's what happens publicly a lot, that we have a certain opinion and it sometimes doesn't resonate with everyone. And the more we succeed, the more men are around us. So I think it's that authentic connection, knowing like it's not just us. Like that, I used to feel a lot of shame around the struggles I had, but I no longer do, because I know that it's not just me, right? Like the moment someone says me too, it's really hard to feel shame about anything. So no matter how authentic and real you are, I feel like even in like networking events, it's sometimes hard to cut through the small talk. So one thing we have as a tradition at Dreamers and Doers at our events is that we go around and we talk about what's been the biggest struggle right now on your mind. What's been a win, because it's really important to celebrate our wins. We work so hard, but sometimes we're ashamed to show off. That's bullshit. And would love to do that here too, just to hear like what's on your mind currently, biggest struggle. I know one of yours, but biggest win. And because it's really hard to not connect. And the way as social media develops, the way we know all of each other, is mainly through social media, right? So we see TechCrunch, we see all those success stories, and that's what that person is to us, right? That's all we know of that person. So just knowing what's actually on someone's mind, what they aren't sharing, can be so powerful. So we'll run through that, and then we'll open up to questions. So biggest struggle on your mind right now, and your biggest recent win?
I mean, struggle for me is, right now, is really just balancing my personal with work, given the nature of where my husband is right now. Especially because I'm right in the smack middle of raising my round for our company. A win, I would say, is that it's been the first time in the history of our company, which has been around for 3 years, where every team member has been there for over a year, which is a big deal because I feel like they actually believe in not just the company, but in me, which for me has been extremely important. So yeah, I guess those would be the 2 for me.
So my biggest struggle right now is learning how to do a lot of things at once. With this business, I kind of feel like I'm blazing a trail that's very unclear. Trying to get these condoms into beauty supply stores, lingerie stores, anywhere that sells female accessories and things like that. And the distribution channel doesn't exist for that. Usually with, normal things, you have a cosmetic distributor and they have relationships with stores and then you can get in there. For me, I've had to figure out how to bypass all of kind of the typical routes and create my own, and it has been very confusing. So that is a struggle, as well as finding ways to respond to a lot of opportunities. Like, we've gotten a lot of people reaching out from countries around the world that want to distribute Lovability, and I'm like, that's awesome. How do I do that? I have no idea. So it's a matter of figuring out how to handle those opportunities. My biggest win right now is my work-life integration. As you guys know, I struggled with that before. Now I use my roommates as people that I interview for their perspective on women and condoms. The guys give me a lot of feedback about their experiences, and I feel like I am surrounded by a lot of people that love and support me, and I love and support them in return, and it's really wonderful to feel that community, and Dreamers and Doers is absolutely part of it, so that's a big win for me.
I think one of my greatest struggles is really just finding enough time to do all the things that I need to do. You know, at the end of the day, we only have 24 hours in the day, but some people seem to get so much more done, and I don't know how they do it. In New York, you're always surrounded by people who seem to be doing great things all the time, so it's really, it's hard because you see people that are doing, like, you know, it's New York, so I feel like I always have a friend who's telling me about some great thing that they just did, a great new job, a great new project, a great new whatever, any number of things. So it's easy to compare yourself, you know, against the TechCrunch articles that are coming out, or whatever it is. But, you know, at the end of the day, you just have to believe in what you're doing.
So struggles right now, so we launched just 2 months ago, and we were written up in TechCrunch, and then Yahoo did a coverage, and all of a sudden we were written up in different blogs and publications from Russia to Korea to Brazil and France and Italy in multiple languages, which is all great. And all of a sudden now that initial push of coverage is drying up, and I'm seeing the download stop, and I'm like, ooh, okay, now what do we do next? And so struggles is constant because you want to get to 1 million downloads as soon as possible, and then that's when investors will want to pay attention to you. And right now, I'm the only full-time employee still, because out of the $130,000 we raised when we launched, $25,000 of that was my own money, and that was the first $25,000 I put into the bank. And so the struggles right now is making the decisions on spending money on marketing. Should we do a party at South by Southwest, or should we invest in more product for the website, or should we actually pay for ads on Facebook and Twitter to get more downloads? So when you only have a limited amount of funds, that's, you know, you have to make tough decisions. So, for instance, I was invited to the launch festival, and then I opted not to go because I didn't want to spend money on that flight, plus my son is in school, and I told myself I would only do 1 business travel per month. And all of a sudden, Sunday, I got invited by Tim Chang, who's head of Mayfield Fund, and Ryan, who runs Product Hunt, which won, you know, best product at the Crunchies, invited me to a dinner of 24 tech music people and investors in San Francisco. I find out on a Sunday, and it was, you know, to be, one, it's hard to be invited to those things, and they're all in one room, and then to be able to, I had to say no, because I couldn't turn it around, and I already had my funds committed to travel at a, you know, a later part of the month when I have to go to Austin. And so those are the struggles right now, but they're all great problems to have. The fact that you have to make those decisions, that you're making those offers, and you have those options. And so my biggest problem right now is actually the making the right choices. And so it's great to have people that I trust, I can bounce things off to, who can tell me that's okay, you can miss that. It'll come back again. So the wins. The wins are also that we have downloads from all over the world. We've been approached by telcos to partner with them. Jean Legere, who's CEO of T-Mobile, tweeted out to his 800,000 followers about loving our app because it's all about music. It's like, oh, an Instagram for music with no food pictures or baby pictures, sign me up. That was his tweet. So that was great. We got a lot of downloads from that and visibility. And to this day, I just got interviewed by OK Player, and we, believe it or not, we are already getting acquisition offers, which I'm resisting. And so those are wins. But I'm in it for the long haul. For every win, there are, like I said before, there are 50 no's. You know, where you have a discussion at a VC and you're in your third meeting and you're thinking you're going to close it, and all of a sudden it doesn't happen. So you just have to shore yourself up again and continue to do everything that's on your checklist and just keep going.
And I think on this journey, it's also so important to see people's journeys, right? And Cecilia is a great example. I met her right when she was starting out, and such a hustler, like literally, like nothing. It's all about like selling the vision. I see, not to draw a comparison, but I will. Like I see the difference more between women and men. Women are just, oh, I just started, and it's just like it's a beta, this and that. Like own it, sell the vision. So from the beginning, selling the vision, and one woman show, like no joke, one woman show with a son. everything from social media to putting the deck together, like everything she did herself. And you didn't meet your technical co-founder until much later. A lot of the prototypes were, I think, also on like PowerPoint. Just there's so many ways to do it, and if like we can all do this, and it's important to have people around us that share the real story, so that we can be inspired to do it ourselves as well. In terms of my end, biggest struggle is, I find our biggest struggles are always our biggest wins. So is figuring out next steps for Dreamers and Doers, but I think I have it all figured out now, more or less. And and it is honestly being here today. It's not being invited to an all-male panel yesterday, which was exciting, and I'm a huge fan of men. So we all love men. That's one thing we also do in Dreamers and Doers. We have a rule like no hating men or no hating anyone else, right? It's all positive. But being here and you all coming, like it's incredible. I would have never imagined that when I started out and I had all those struggles initially. Now, first of all, thank you for being so bold, and we'd love more bold questions from you guys. Who would like to start?
I don't need the microphone. Hi, thank you very much for everything that you said. I just had a small comment and a question. It's very nice to be surrounded by women, but one of the hardest things is to reach out to more men regarding women's issues and female organizations and female-led enterprises. And I'm asking you, for example, do you have a different speech when you are targeting men than when you're targeting women? And how do you manage to have an audience built by men and women, and how to address those different messages? Thank you.
So I'll just repeat the question. The question was, if you adjust your pitch depending on gender to women and men, and how do you address the audience, or how do you deal with mixed audiences versus if it's not all women?
First of all, Gesche is moderating, so her questions are unique to this group, I believe. When I've spoken at other panels, when it's a man that is moderating, questions are totally different. So you're not encouraged to share as much of your struggles, really. You can't, and even if I think Gesche moderated a panel and there were men on this panel, I honestly don't believe that they'll share anything that's vulnerable. Men are taught not to be vulnerable. They see it as a weakness. And so, I don't know. That's my response anyway.
I mean, I personally don't pitch differently. I am who I am. I mean, obviously, our questions are very different. But when it comes to pitching the company, this is what I am. This is who I am. You get what you get, and that's about it. I don't think I have to change my pitch. But I can maybe see, do you have to do that with condoms?
I love that I can learn so much about a man by the way he responds to my pitch. It is the best way to tell if he's creepy, if he's intelligent, if he respects me. And at first I was so self-conscious, what does he think of me? And then I flipped it and I was like, what am I thinking of him right now? And it really empowered me. I became so much, less concerned. And I've had a tremendous support from men. During the NYU Entrepreneurship Festival last year, we did this campaign where we gave women a free condom if they held up a sign that said, I blank, and then wrote their name, carry condoms. So I, Susan, carry condoms. And we asked permission. Can we post this on our Instagram, our Facebook, everywhere? Because we want to show this online community that you are proud to be prepared, and this is okay. And something really fascinating happened. At first, women were really self-conscious to do it. And then men came up with women and were like, wow, this is so cool. You should really do this. Or they're like, can I do this? And getting really excited about it. And the women then became more excited about it, and kind of the energy built off one another. And then we started letting men do it too. And I was with this guy named Ted, who was 50, who was Asian, who wanted to hold up the sign. I'm like, sure. It just became something where if men and women could band together and show support for one another, the message became stronger. And I realized that as much as we don't want to say that, we seek validation from men, we do seek social acceptance from our peers, from other people. So to see that men support women carrying condoms is a huge element of the social mission of my business. And so I had to be mindful of that and integrate that into my messaging and acknowledge that that is an important barrier to making women feel comfortable. So in that circumstance, I did kind of change my technique slightly, but I still stay very true to my mission and my values.
So just one last thing, like on vulnerability, I think we talk about that a lot among women, and I think what it comes down to is being vulnerable is just having the courage to be ourselves. So some people think of it as being a weakness. I think that's the strongest form of strength.
Hi, thank you so much. All this is so helpful. Any advice on raising your seed round? How much point you felt? Give some advice on when they're ready, and then where to actually go and get that seed round.
If you look at SlideShare, there's a lot of guidelines. I think there's a top 10 investor pitch decks, and 500 Startups has one too. So, so you can find examples there, and I'm not sure what business it is that you're starting, so based on what that is, I would tell you to include other things. And in terms of what was the other question? Part of the question? Oh, raising money, seed. So people like to see you go to friends and family first. And if they feel like your friends and family are investing in you and validating you, then they'll more readily give you money. So I know it's tough, especially if you don't come from a wealthy background or don't have a circle of wealthy friends, and it's already an advantage if you've gone to the top schools. Clearly, if that's your network, and that's it. So, but yeah, try to with me with my current startup. I happen to have been talking to a friend who we were just meeting for coffee. And I was talking about what I was doing, and he said, I want to put in $25,000. And at that point, I actually thought that I wasn't ready to do it yet. I was still consulting and taking corporate projects on the side. And him giving me $25,000 allowed me to actually register the name, decide to not renew the contract I had with this consulting project, and go on it full force because it was validation. So I would suggest just meet with as many people as possible that could be helpful to you, and they might lead you to people or introduce you to people that would say, I know someone. And actually some of my leads on additional investors are coming from people who I know are in my circle, who are passionate about music and technology, and actually said, you know what, I went to school with so-and-so who's been talking to me about this, and let me introduce them to you. So just like have 3 or 4 coffees a day, or even if you did 2 a day, and talk to people and reach out to people, talk about it. And if you convey yourself passionately, they will believe in you. Because everybody then has to put their personal brand on the line. And when I meet with other entrepreneurs and ask me for introductions or advice, if they're not conveying that passion to me, I can't introduce them to other people, Because I feel like they should be feeling comfortable with me. What if they actually go with people who are strangers? And so that's why I give you a lot of credit that you're here and you're speaking passionately about your business when your husband is in the hospital, because I know it's tough. It's like an acting job. I have to, I can't talk to anyone an hour before a meeting. I have to be in my headspace. I have to do all my research. I have to grill myself with all of the questions that I think they might be asking and really psych myself up. I can't even watch negative news. I need to be that positive. So hopefully that helps.
Just curious, just to follow up on that. Did you give all of those family and friends equity within the company? And how did you, because if you are going to go with them, then starting to evaluate how much equity you give them, unless it's just like a friendly loan where you pay them back?
Basically, a seed round is a convertible note. So you kind of decide on a valuation. And I forget which, I think it's also 500 Startups maybe, or Techstars. Somebody posts what a convertible note should be, a standard one. And so just use that. And the tough thing is on determining what the valuation is. So when somebody gave me the first $25,000, should it be $1 million? Should it be $3 million? You know what I mean? And that's up to you. That's why it's so important to be confident and know that you're approaching this in a big way and you have a huge potential, because it makes a difference on you giving up 5% of your company or 15% of your company.
Fred Wilson, a lot of New York investors have blogs, so even if you just look them up, Fred Wilson has a really good one where they do a lot of explanation of when you're starting out what you could possibly do.
Could each of you speak, I don't think I know this, but could each of you, I don't think I need to stand up. Could each of you talk a little bit about how marketing has fit into your startups and like what you, maybe where you started with that and like what your plans are as you move forward with your startups? Related back to marketing.
The question was related to what everyone has done in terms of marketing.
So when FoodtoEat first started in its original form, it was an online ordering platform for food trucks. So I was waiting online at a food truck, was really irritated. I come from New York. It's just something we generally do. We get irritated by everything. So I was waiting on a food truck line. It was 20 minutes. So we were doing B2C marketing. So initially we did a lot of guerrilla campaigning. I was just trying to do as minimum spend as possible. We've now shifted our model. We worked with the same vendors, stuck to the core mission. How do we get these business owners more business that had never been approached before, which were food trucks? So honestly now our marketing spend has gone down just because a lot of it is now based off of referrals because it's a B2B model. So that's basically what our marketing spend has really been. And even as we're pitching to investors, the only thing we're really looking to hire is based off of hires. We're not looking to spend as much on marketing. People like our product, people like our service, and they recommend. So I'm proud to say General Assembly became a client of ours in December, and hopefully you like the food that we're feeding you every week. But it was all through references, it was all through building a good network and people believing in who I was and my team, and went from there. So marketing spend for us has gone down, and it's pretty awesome.
So at Lovability, we haven't spent any money on marketing. What I have done is invested my time in creating shareable content, telling my story, sharing that there's a problem and a solution and there's a need, sharing women and men's opinions on women carrying condoms, things like that. I've also focused on creating strategic partnerships. I think Twitter is a really great way to get in touch with people that can amplify your brand's voice. About a year ago, we started partnering with the Teen Mom celebrities from MTV's Teen Mom. So essentially, a little ironic, we sent them a lot of Lovability condoms and basically said, hey, thanks so much for sharing your story and encouraging women to, take control of their sexual health, because a lot of these teen moms want to encourage that, and they don't just want to be current, they want to be relevant, and they want to stand for something that matters, and they want to stick around for a while in the public eye. And we saw that standing for Lovability gave them the opportunity to really say something positive and encourage women to be healthy. So they started tweeting to their millions of followers, Instagramming, really becoming brand advocates. And I look forward to doing that with other influentials and making really authentic relationships with them so that they really share our mission as well.
For us, marketing was probably the hardest part of our business, just getting the word out there. And that's going to be harder or easier depending on what industry you're targeting. But, just learn as much as you can about SEO and all those other things. We started a blog. We worked closely with other blogs to try to get the word out there. But really, I feel like it's not how many people you reach, but the quality of the people that you reach. So you want to get people who are influencers, who have a large following, who are very prominent, who can talk about your product and vouch for it and validate it.
So marketing for me starts with a name and the logo and your Twitter handle and everything else, and your little description on Twitter, your bio, your social media, everything. And so, and networking. It's all about networking. So in fact, when I was just talking about Apploud last year, and Gesche and I were at South by Southwest having barbecue at this place, Gesche happens to she was sitting next to this guy, Brian Zisk, who runs SF Music Tech in San Francisco, and she overheard him say, do you know any women who are into music and technology, because we're looking for speakers? And she said, over there, and pointed at me at the other side of the table. And I actually went up to him, and he goes, well, tell me about your startup. I said, well, you're eating, I'll talk to you afterwards. You know what, if you were a dude, you would push away my tray right now, put your laptop in front of me, and start talking to me. I said, okay, so I did that. But even that was like a wake-up call that guys' approaches are different than women's. I was like being polite, and he said not to be polite. And I had a chance to actually pitch at San Francisco Music Tech before we even launched at this panel in front of like 300 people, which was a great opportunity. So I started, doing that, advocating for the app. And anytime there's an opportunity to speak at a conference, I actually reach out. I said, do you need speakers? Do you need someone to speak on this topic, on entrepreneurship, on startups, on crowdfunding, on mobile, on anything? And especially if you don't have a budget. But social media is great, and reaching out to other influencers. So I don't know what your product is or what you need to do, but most journalists, their Twitter handles or their emails are available on their bios when you read about them. So track all of those people who's covering your vertical, and engage them already now on Twitter, so that when you hit them up later on, they're like, oh, this person just showed up today. This person didn't follow me and actually knows her shit. So marketing has to start from the very beginning and continues to evolve, because every bit helps.
So we'll do one more question before we start moving. I saw her before I saw you.
Sorry. Do you have any favorite books or other resources to help with entrepreneurship or starting a company or marketing, or really any key field of starting a business?
Any holy grail books or resources for startups and starting companies?
I'm so happy you asked this question, because I would have forgotten. I am loving this book right now called Sacred Success. Can't remember the name of the author. Oh, no, can't remember, but you can look it up. Sacred Success, incredible. It's in the personal finance section, but it is geared towards women and women who strive towards greatness and want to be business people. But it can apply to not, necessarily being an entrepreneur, but fantastic resource. It has changed my life.
I do not have something that has changed my life.
I really love Doug Rushkoff's Life Inc. For some reason, it really got me motivated to become an entrepreneur again after being in corporate for some time. So I highly recommend it, Doug Rushkoff. And Lean Startup. Somebody actually bought me Lean Startup, the digital version of it. And what was great about it is that halfway through reading it, I realized I've actually been following everything on it. And so it was just validation. There's also this book called The Power of Pull. How, if you convey passion, you don't have to ask all the time. Things will be drawn to you. If you have the right brand and you're conveying the right message and the right passion, things will come to you. I had, Miley Cyrus's producer reached out on Twitter and said, I love your app. What can I do? How can I help? I have songwriters who want to invest money. So it's kind of interesting how sometimes that goes through. So this book called The Power of Pull. And something else. Power of Pull, Life Inc., Lean Startup. There's a bunch more, but those are the ones that and if you're in an e-commerce business, you must read Delivering Happiness, which is Tony Hsieh's.
So thank you to all of you. Thank you to Cecilia, Raquel, Tiffany, and Deepti. Thank you for all of you for coming. Thank you for General Assembly for making this happen. Thank you for all the women and men in this room. If you leave, just take one thing away from here. That's what I'm taking away from here. There's so many reasons for us to not be bold, but the journey is so worth it if we are, and I think we all have the responsibility to figure out what it takes for us to be bolder, because otherwise we'll go to the graveyard with a lot of unfulfilled dreams that we didn't even attempt. And if you aren't part of Dreamers and Doers and you're interested to learn more, find me. I'm going to grab your email address. We're also hosting a co-working pop-up event this Sunday if anyone wants to be productive together, instant sounding boards, meet great people. We're doing it this Sunday at Fueled, and I'll share event details with you. Thank you so much, and I hope you all mingle, meet lots of inspiring people, and I hope we all stay in touch. Thank you.